Speaking specifically today regarding general adaptation syndrome. Now, general adaptation syndrome is kind of the foundation for everything in training, working out, fitness, weight loss, eliciting a training response out of your athletes, etc. It's really, really at its core what this whole process is about. And general adaptation syndrome is good stuff, and I want to dig into it here in a second. But first, I just want to make sure we touch base on Team Builder. Now, a Team Builder, at this point, you all should have had a push notification. At this point, you all should have had a workout sent to you. If you're unable to log in or have an issue with that, please send me an email and we'll resolve it before this week. Remember, you get points for completing your workouts on Team Builder, and I can cross-reference that and then give you your 5 points for every workout that we have, 2 per week, 8 weeks, 16, 80 points. Good? All right, let's jump into general adaptation syndrome. So when you look at this theory, and it's actually in practice, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. It's a way your body reacts to stressors that are placed upon it. And we have so many different stressors that affect our body all day, every day, whether on a benign side where you don't realize the stressor, or very acute where it's at the moment and you actually realize the stressor, and you might even be in control of the stressor you're placing on your body if you're working out. And when you look at the experiments that were completed, what happened was Cellier took an electrical stimulus and zapped a single-celled organism, and he started to notice some results and some consistencies in the results. And it determined and wrapped itself around of how frequent the stimuli was applied, that zap, that electrical zap, or how much, how high a frequency. So if, for example, you had an increase in frequency and he zapped a single-celled organism more, he noticed the response. He also noticed if the actual electrical current was too great or too small, he noted those responses as well. So if you have just the right amount of stimuli at just the right amount of frequency, you can elicit a training response. In the case of a single-celled organism, had a thickening of the membrane cell, or cell membrane, excuse me. Now, with humans and working out, it's a little bit different animal in terms of the stressors you're placing on the human organism. But in general, you'll usually see this written up as a 3-step, right, process where the single-celled organism gets zapped, and you have too much, too little, just right. And the process goes from alarm to resistance to exhaustion. And I tend to evaluate it more in terms of a 4-step process and include homeostasis, because again, I often think of it and look at it in terms of the athlete that's in front of me. While they might have been up, going to class, running around, working on homework, etc., maybe at work, they're not in a training environment. And so as soon as you put that athlete or a client in a training environment, you're applying a stimulus to that person or the human organism, and you're taking them out of homeostasis and you're putting them in a position for a training response. And they will go through that alarm stage, the resistance stage, and exhaustion stage, depending upon the amount and frequency of stimulus applied. Whether it's a dumbbell bicep curl, or it's running on a treadmill, or running up a flight of stairs, or box jumping, there is a training response. So there are many other stressors that affect us, right? And in our case, in school here, you have work life, family life, you got bills, right? You got to feed the family. Perhaps you have to go out to work every day. Perhaps you have a boss who's a knucklehead. You also, in our case, have schoolwork, homework, etc., and the workouts that you apply to your body. So when you look at these across the board, these are a little bit more benign. They're more chronic. They operate behind the scenes, and they go on all day, every day. You can't really run away from those. For the workouts, it's important to note that if you're doing this yourself, or if you're, say, coaching, or you're a personal trainer or a physical therapist, a movement practitioner, as I like to refer to them, you are in control of these. And where that becomes important is you can control how much of a stress you place on the body. And I'll get to this in 1 second. So with quiz questions, I like to kind of point these out sometimes. If you look at like what's been presented in class, I use a 4-stage approach as opposed to a 3-stage approach. So you can base your answer based off of that. And then please correctly choose the 4 stages of general adaptation syndrome in order, and you have to refer back to the slide in this presentation. So with your workout, before you go out and pound out a workout, I want you to realize how general adaptation syndrome kind of plays into this, right? As a coach, here's an example. When I would develop training programs for my athletes, when I coached at Austin Peay, I was a head strength coach, I would be cognizant of things like winter break, spring break, finals week, midterms, Thanksgiving break, etc. Because let's just kind of take this example. As you go through a term and you get towards, say, the end of the term and you have a final exam coming in December, it was nonsensical for me to have my athletes test out during that time. They had such a high amount of stress from school placed on their bodies. Meanwhile, they have to pack up and get themselves back home. And for some, going back home is a bit of a stressor, right? Because they have to go back and deal with family and kind of get plugged back into family life, that it would affect this. So they had these benign kind of behind the scenes stressors going on that would affect their workout. So it was just ignorant for me to have them test out during finals week. So what I did was I would alter the training schedule and I would target them to test out either the week or 2 weeks before their final exams. Reason being, these stressors were not fully on the table yet, and it allowed my athletes to fully focus on their workouts and test out. And then I would take them into an active recuperation phase, which you'll see later on in our class. We'll talk about that. So just kind of be aware of when you look at strategizing your workouts and planning and scheduling, these have a part because they affect this. All right, now go get your workout. Thanks, guys.